Welcome back to Beyond the Veil background information. Today we're doing another character profile, and this time it's the main male protagonist from Fragrance Paradise. So that's Jim Essel. Jim groaned softly in frustration when the phone call finally ended before he slumped his 6-foot bulky form onto the end and rubbed the top of his nose. He really hated that his mother was deciding to nag him, and no more than a minute from the end of the phone call, Stacey sent him a text asking if he was awake too, which he promptly replied to. It just seemed to be some sort of curse he'd landed with, when he'd been born a boy to that man. The women in his family never trusted him for anything. That's a quote from Fragrance Paradise. So here we have the lucky or rather unlucky protagonist of Fragrance Paradise. Certainly a fun character to work on. Name, Jim Essel Junior, known as Jim. Position, human. He's ignorant, as in from beyond the veil, so he doesn't know anything about like fairies or vampires or anything of that nature. Story featured in Fragrance of Paradise. Role, protagonist. Gender, male. Description, tall at 6'2", with dark brown hair that's almost black, pasty white skin. They have a few earrings in their ear and a scar on his chin from a bike accident. His arms are a little tanned from sun damage, and his eyes are a boring brown shade and sunken in to give him a constant expression of looking old, and he's also muscular. Realm, beyond the veil. Abilities, nothing unusual. Master, himself. Personality, they're friendly and bold with a tendency to chuckle at the best of times, but when he doesn't like something or he's not sure, face naturally scowls, and it scares people. He tries not to judge people because they judge him far too quickly. He's protective of anyone in need, and has often found girlfriends this way and then been dumped because he was just a stepping stone. He never turns away from those in need, but often it means he's lonely, but for Ziggy. Relations. Jim Essel, a womanizing military figure working in the army, and his father. James used various different deployments and travels with the army to get a girlfriend in every port, and possibly a lot of other kids. When he'd return home, he'd still continue to play around, including with the wives of friends, and his relationship with Jim was marred by this, because his son was always getting picked on because of it. Jim never really gave much interest to his son, thanks to a deal. As long as Jim was alive, then all the consequences for his actions would be rebuffed onto Jim, so his father never really cared much as long as the kid was around to get the consequences from his actions. Angie Essel, his mother. When his father was away, she'd show him affection and adore him for being her little bit of his father. But when his dad was around, he was often blamed for everything and ignored. He felt his mother had already given up on him doing anything good when he was a teenager, and it drove him into being troublesome, which only worked with his mother's image of him. He tries to look after her and always offers her help, care and love, but due to the curse from his father, Angie just seems to see Jim as the being his father truly was. Stacey, his older sister. For years she was the only one that never changed and was always on Jim's side. She was Dad's favourite, but she loved her baby brother, and he was always guaranteed of a cuddle. However, when his sister became a teenager, she began to judge him constantly, thus that he was going down the wrong path, and just like the mother, she was constantly telling him that he would never be good enough. Jim couldn't understand the shift, but like with his mother, always opened his arms to his sister. He warned her he didn't think it would work out with her husband, but she didn't really care. But whenever she had trouble, she went to him. He is a protective and loving brother, but wishes his sister would go back to how she was. Minnie, his only female ally that's not an employee. Minnie is his niece and his favourite person in the universe, as she's unaffected by the curse and loves him greatly. He spends his free time building her a doll's house, and she's always upbeat and eager to tell him what no one else will, though her mother can sometimes wonder if she's all right with her uncle. Jim makes sure she's the princess and comes first in everything when he's with her. Ziggy, a Staffordshire Bull Terrier he adopted from a rescue shelter. Ziggy was a nervous dog in need of affection that was being ignored because of his breed despite being soppy. Understanding his plight and feeling lonely, Jim found himself adopting the dog, and he's almost his right-hand man in all decision-making around the house. Sort of. Arthur, the first person to be a father-like figure to him. Arthur was the landowner of an old burnt bar called the Rusty Turnpike, and found himself working alongside Jim at another bar further down the road, giving him a place to rent before he finally decided to put money into rebuilding the bar for Jim to run. Surprisingly, it worked out well, and with his best friend Tom also investing, and friends from a biker gang, Arthur found he'd made a sound investment, but finds himself often coming over to the house to cook Jim breakfast and check on him, thinking of him like a son. Tom, Jim's best friend growing up on the base. Tom and Jim are tight and always working together on something, but their friendship was almost ruined when they caught Tom's mother and Jim's father together, causing Tom's parents to divorce and his own father to doubt his heritage. Though they always act like brothers, Tom's always been a jet setter, and his work has him travelling a lot and making a lot of money, When he put money into Jim's new project, he came back later with a new opportunity building holiday homes or fancy rental places on the excess land in this beautiful countryside, and so hangs around often to be there for Jim. Nilufer, the Perry he randomly inherits and releases from her bonds. Jim wants to help her and be her friend, but she makes it very difficult with her self-righteous attitude, and yet he finds himself compelled to constantly help her out. History. This will have to be trimmed to just bullet points, okay? Because grew up on a military base with other kids and his sister. Only his sister and friend Tom were on his side because everyone bullied him for being the son of a home wrecker. In high school, he fell in love with a girl, but her parents said kids like him, with his kinds of parents, weren't to be trusted, and they never really got to date. One of the few teachers to believe in him was the home economics or cooking teacher that could see his potential. Jim was expelled in the final year of school for knocking out a teacher that was making another student cry, and he couldn't take it. He took a job as a pan scrubber and got into college to do food hygiene and basic cooking stuff. The older he got, the more he could work at the super tough biker bar, and the more friends he made. When his rarely spoken to grandmother died, she left him a hefty sum that he kept aside for his future, but meant his angry father, who'd only inherited a house, kicked him out of the family home. Getting a second day job at a restaurant, he met Arthur and was given a place to rent. He spent money on a bike he adores to help him travel easier and kept his belongings light. He was able to give some money to his sister and niece for the wedding and the birth, but his sister barred him from hanging around his niece for a long time. He put money with Arthur into fixing the rusty turnpike bar, and it was an overnight success. Tom also put money in. He moved in, and to stave off his loneliness, got a dog in Ziggy. His father separated from his mother and never divorced, but only returned for sex. Jim tried going out with women, but it never seemed to work out properly, and after helping him out, they all dumped him. With his sister starting to see their father's issues and having their own marriage issues, he was finally allowed to meet his niece. Things were finally starting to look up, and then his father died, and he inherited something shocking. Final comments. I like Jim a lot. He's a guy that's taken on a lot of shit over the years and based loosely on an old friend I used to work with that, despite what he'd gone through in his life, still kept a positive attitude. But I also just had fun with him because he was a normal person trying to live his life when he got pulled into a weird world. Thank you very much for listening, and I apologise if my voice is a bit croaky because I've just gotten over a bout of tonsillitis. It's also why these are running late for uploading on Patreon. So, thank you very much. Bye.